Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know it's been a while since I posted a video. I've just been going through some personal things in my personal life and YouTube just kind of ended up on the back burner. I thought it would be fun to tell you guys all about all the books that I've been reading because I have truly been reading so much. I honestly don't think I've talked about any of the books that I have read over the course of this entire year. I think I have like one reading vlog that I posted and then the rest have been all sit down videos. So I thought I would go through all of the books that I have read so far this year. Kimber has joined us for this part of the video. But I wanted to tell you guys that I have set a reading goal of 46 books this year, and one of my goals was to have a good quality over quantity and just like reading for fun and not feeling pressured to read. I feel like between all the different book platforms and people saying you should read this, you should read that, I was getting really caught up in that and it was making reading not fun for me and it made me actually like not want to read books at all. So I went through a period this year where I was just like not reading at all and nothing I was reading was really like making me happy or anything. Thankfully, I feel like I'm out of my slump finally. I've been reading so many books in the past like I'd say 2 months or so. I'm going to tell you guys all about that, so I hope that you will enjoy it. And without further ado, let's jump right in. I just took all of my books off of my bookshelf. It looks a little disastrous back there. I guess I'll just start going in order from like January to now. I'm not gonna like give a summary of the book or anything. I'll just kind of give my rating and my thoughts. I feel like I love going into books blind. And sometimes reading a lot of people's wrap-ups and reviews, it's like the same thing over and over again where they're telling you what the book is about and their thoughts, and I don't want to ruin any of that for you guys. If you're interested in any of the books I say, just go ahead and look them up for yourself. So I've read 25 books so far this year, and I think I am only one book behind according to my Goodreads. I have been reading a lot on my Kindle actually, so I don't have like all the physical copies that I'm going to talk about like in this video, so I'll just put an image up on the screen so you guys can see. Starting in January, I feel like one of the things I've done a good job of doing this year is I have finished so many series that I started, and I know I made that video where I was in the middle of I think like 20 or so series, which is absolutely crazy. I actually have a spreadsheet in my Notion of all the series that I'm in the middle of, and I think I'm 55% of the way through. The first book that I started the year off reading was the last book in the Throne of Glass series, Kingdom of Ash. I rated this one... Hold on, I gotta just pull it up on my phone. Just kidding. The first book I did not read of the year was not Kingdom of Ash. I actually read, well, I didn't read, I listened to the audiobook of The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. That is her kind of new series. It's based off of The Cruel Prince. It's like in the same universe. I didn't give this one a rating because I listened to it on audio over Christmas when we were in the car road tripping to Connecticut, and I'm pretty sure I fell asleep during parts, so I really need to reread this one. And then the next book that I read again on my Kindle was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This is one of the first like psychological thriller books that I've ever read, and I feel like it was a good starter book to like kind of get into that genre because I don't typically read a lot of books in that genre. I rated this one 4 stars. I don't think I would continue on with the series just because I wasn't really interested in the premise of the second book, but I am glad that I went ahead and read it because it is pretty popular. After that, I read Live by Sadie Robertson Huff. I do actually have the hard copy here. I absolutely love her. I feel like I've talked about her so much on this channel. If you guys are Christian and you want to be reading any kind of Christian book, she writes a lot of good books for young women, and I just feel like I honestly relate to so many things that she has gone through in her life, especially in terms of anxiety and stuff. I think I own almost every single book that she's ever written, and I always really enjoy them, so I always recommend. I rated this one 3 stars. Then the last book I read in January was the What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I can't even talk. I remember I picked this up in Barnes & Noble solely based on the cover because I think this is a special edition. It's super pretty. It's got like the portraits of the main characters in here, and on the actual cover of the book it's got all these like Egyptian hieroglyphics, which I thought were really cool. I had very high expectations for this book just based on the plot and what it's about. I feel like it's advertised very similar to the Mummy movies if you guys have ever watched those films. It wasn't what I thought it was, and I'm not sure if I want to continue on with the second book. I ended up rating this one 3 stars. I honestly don't even really remember what happens in this, so it wasn't very memorable for me. Not that 3 stars is a bad rating. Moving into February, February. The only book that I read in this month was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This is the last book in the Once Upon a Heart trilogy. I'm very happy that I finally finished this so I can put it on my bookshelf. I absolutely love the characters in this book. I loved how she wrapped everything up. I'm really hoping that she releases a spin-off series for the other family that is talked about in this book, because I would absolutely love to read a book based on them. These books really remind me of the show The Vampire Diaries, if you've ever seen them. I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars. I started Kingdom of Ash in the month of February, did not finish it in the month of February because clearly this is a brick. It's like almost 1,000 pages long. It took me so long to start this because I was so intimidated reading this just because of the length of it, because I knew it was going to take me obviously a really long time. I am very happy to say that I have officially finished this series and I love these characters so much. I actually got a Kindle sticker that says "To Whatever End Fire Heart" on it and I'm obsessed with it. But I remember being so sad finishing this. It was not a 5-star book for me. This was not a 5-star series for me, which was a little disappointing because you guys know how much I love ACOTAR. I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars. I really liked how she ended things. Another series that I ended up finishing, and I'm just going to talk about all these now even though I didn't read them all in the same months, was the Chestnut Springs series. I actually started reading these on my Kindle, and then as I continued reading them, I liked them so much that I wanted to have the physical copies of them from my bookshelf. In March, I ended up reading Heartless and Powerless, and I actually tabbed Powerless. This was the first book that I have ever tabbed, and I have not gotten around to tabbing anymore after reading this. Last month I finished reading Reckless and Hopeless, and this series was not a 5-star series for me. I definitely did like the cowboy romance part of reading these books. I really like Elsie Silver's writing aside from the spice. These are a little heavy on the spice depending on which book you read. My favorite book out of this series was definitely Reckless, and then I really enjoyed Powerless, but Flawless and Heartless were not my favorites. I rated Heartless 3 stars, and then I rated Powerless 4 stars. I rated Reckless 4.5 stars, and I rated Hopeless 3.5. I also had a couple of DNFs this year. I had started The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue in March, and I ended up DNFing that and starting something else. In April, I read 4.5 books. I started First Lie Wins. I forget what the author's name is, but I did not finish that. I stopped that at about 30% and I just like really wasn't feeling that book. I don't think it was for me. And then I ended up reading This Is How You Heal by Brianna Weiss. I lied earlier because I tapped this book. I forgot that I tapped this one. This is another one of those kind of Pinterest-esque poetry books that you see with all the really pretty quotes and stuff in it. I just think her writing is beautiful. I really related to a lot of the things that she talks about in this book, and I want to buy more of her books. I did not rate this one. I feel kind of weird rating self-help books. I used to do that, but now I'm kind of in a space where I'm like, there's not really like a concrete story to it. It's more like someone giving you advice, and I don't feel like I need to like rate someone else's advice, so I decided not to give this one a rating. Next up, I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is kind of like a sci-fi thriller. I've heard pretty good things about his writing, and I will say I absolutely loved every single thing about this book. It was very action-packed, had it on my toes, not knowing like what was going to happen next. I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars. There is a show on Apple TV, I believe, that they made out of this book, and I haven't seen that because I don't have Apple TV, but it did look really good, and I just was absolutely obsessed with how much I enjoyed this book. After I read Dark Matter, I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I haven't read any of her books before, so I wasn't sure how I was going to feel going into it, but you guys, I think this is my second favorite book that I have read so far this year. This was my first 5-star book of the year. I was absolutely obsessed with the plot, with the characters. I really liked how even though it's a romance, she has more of an underlying plot in regards to mental health and stuff. I loved the banter between the characters. I just loved every single thing about this book. It really made me want to read more of her writing because I loved it. I actually have Yours Truly up on my shelf because I bought a copy after I read this because I wanted to read it, and then I got sidetracked and I started something else. After that, I actually listened to the audiobook for Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. That's part of a series that I had started. I ended up rating that one 3 stars. It was just really slow for me, and I think this is just a recurring theme for me when it comes to listening to audiobooks. I just don't think like I can get fully immersed like into the world, rather than like sitting there reading on my Kindle, reading a physical copy. Listening to it is just something else for me. Like I'm listening to an audiobook right now, and I just feel like I would be getting so much more out of it if I was sitting there actually reading like a copy of it in my hands than like listening to it with my ears. That's probably just a me problem. I rated this one 3 stars. It was slow, like I said, but it hasn't strayed me from not wanting to like finish out the series. I think it's a fun series. And going into May, I started reading Love Songs Suck. This is by Becky Monson. She is another one of those like Kindle Unlimited authors that I absolutely love. I've read, I think, almost all of her books, and I've enjoyed every single one. This one was a little bit of a miss for me. The story was really cute, but I didn't really like the tropes in this book at all, and I wasn't really a fan of the main character, so I ended up rating that one 3 stars. And then I listened to another one on audio. This is one of our book club picks for actually the month of August coming up. It's called The Guncle by, what's his name? Stephen Rowley. And this is a part of a series as well, but I don't plan on reading. I think it's the second book in the duology. I rated this one 3.25 stars. I really loved the narrator on the audio. The last half of the book was really slow for me, and I didn't really like care about the main character at all, so it was just kind of like a meh. I ended up rating that one 3.25 stars. After reading The Guncle, I read another kind of like self-helpy book. This is by Timothy Keller and his wife, Kathy Keller. It's called The Meaning of Marriage, Facing the Complexities of Commitment with the Wisdom of God. He's actually a very well-known like Christian author, and I think he passed away last year, which was really sad. I remember seeing that. I really enjoyed this book. I've owned this for quite a while, and I've been meaning to get to it. I didn't end up rating it just because it was another one of those like I'm kind of giving you advice kind of book, so I didn't really want to give it a rating. In my review, I wrote, it has good principles to consider following on your journey to marriage. I think people in relationships can relate to these concepts more personally, but it gives a good, honest exploration of what the purpose of marriage is and what you expect for someone who is dating and still single. I think a lot of the things he points out in here about like what to expect going into a marriage and like why you even want to be married, I think he makes a lot of really good points about that. Not stuff I would have actually really considered or thought about prior to reading this book, and I'll definitely have to go back and reread it again. Jumping into the month of June, I actually read 4 books this month, and I started off reading The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Ponson. I rated this one 4.25 stars. I absolutely adored this book. I read it on my Kindle. I really liked the concept of the romance, and I think the way she does the timelines and like going to the past, then going to the present was really well done. I just thought it was such an interesting concept, and I really enjoyed it. After that, I ended up reading A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I rated this one 3 stars. This is kind of like a cozy fantasy. I remember going into it, I really liked the premise of what it's about, and I had like high expectations, but it ended up being a really weird book and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be at all. It was just really slow at times, and I remember I think I read it really quickly because I was just like, I just want to get this over with, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I remember being really disappointed with this one. After I read that one, I actually ended up reading a duology, and I am kind of mad at myself that I waited so long to read these because, again, they're very popular books, but I feel like sometimes when people hype up books, it almost makes me not want to read them. I finally gave Divine Rivals a chance, and I read this, like I speed read these, you guys. I was absolutely obsessed with the world, obsessed with the romance. I really loved it so much. I ended up rating Divine Rivals like a 4.25 to 4.5, and then after that I immediately jumped into Ruthless Vows and I ended up rating that one a 5 stars. I absolutely loved that book, and I really want to get like the physical copies to keep on my bookshelf because I read them through Kindle Unlimited. I just remember when I was reading Ruthless Vows, in my review I wrote, haven't read a book like this in a long time, because it made me feel so many things, and I was just like, every minute I had I was picking up and I was reading this book. The ending of Divine Rivals also leaves you on a big cliffhanger, and that's why I was like, thank God Kindle Unlimited has the second book, because I would have to go to the store and buy it right now. I absolutely loved that series, would highly recommend. After those, I started Crooked Kingdom, and I actually forgot to take that off of my shelf. It's sitting right here, and I ended up DNFing it. That's the second book in the Six of Crows duology. I have seen the show, and if you've seen the show, I will say, like, what's in the show is in the books. I just, for me personally, have a problem reading books when I already know what's going to happen, and I just wasn't really connecting with any of the characters. I DNF'd it around 225 pages. I'm not sure what the percentage is in that, but it's also a very, very long book, and it wasn't bringing me joy, so I just decided to DNF it and move on to something else. After that is when I actually read Reckless and Heartless, which I already talked about. After that, I read a lot of like poetry, self-help books on my Kindle that I got through Kindle Unlimited that I did not give ratings. You'll Come Back to Yourself, and then after that I read Healing for No One But Me. After the poetry books, I jumped into Iron Flame, and I ended up reading that one 5 stars. This is another one where I was just like so mad at myself that I waited so long to read this book. It really brought me back to life and like completely out of my slump. Every minute I had, I was reading that book. Keep in mind, it's almost a 900-page book when you buy it on the Kindle, and I think I read it in like 2 to 3 days. So clearly I could not put it down. I remember I read it for like 6 or 7 hours on a Saturday. That is how into the world I was and like how obsessed I was with it. I'm very, very excited for Onyx Flame. That comes out in January, I think. Do I feel like that book was a little rushed? Yes. But am I happy to have read it? Also yes. I think continue to enjoy the universe and the dragons and things that are in that book series. And if you haven't read Fourth Wing, I would highly recommend. So far it has been a 5-star series for me. I just feel like there are no other like fantasy books out there that are like what's in Fourth Wing. I've heard a lot of people say that they thought Fourth Wing was better than Iron Flame. In retrospect, I would agree with that, but also I still really, really enjoyed it, and it was very, very easy to read. I liked all the new characters that were introduced. I am very upset, but also curious to see where the plot goes in book 3, and also just really intrigued because there's supposed to be 5 books in that series. The last book that I actually just finished the other day, this is my 25th book. It's The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton. I ended up reading this one like 2.75 on the borderline of 3 stars. It's kind of like a literary fiction almost, but apocalyptic vibes, because it's all about like climate change specifically in Florida. It focuses on this family that lives in Florida. The book spans the entirety of one of the children's lives, and you kind of get to see how Florida and the climate and the world and everything disintegrates because of climate change and water levels rising and all these things. You get to see how the environment is kind of impacted and how it impacts like her life in the book. I thought that concept was really interesting, and that's kind of why I wanted to read it. It was just kind of a weird book. There was a concept in it that I didn't quite understand. It reminded me a lot of Where the Crawdads Sing. If you guys have either watched the movie or read the book, I think the main character in Where the Crawdads Sing and the Light Pirate have a lot of characteristics in common. But just the way that the story even ended, how it was broken up, I just wasn't really into it that much, and it was kind of a letdown because I've had that one on my TBR for a while. So with all that being said, here are all of the physical copies of the books that I have read so far this year. And Kemper is getting in the frame, huh? I'm definitely happy with the books I've read so far this year. I think I kind of had a rough start, but I've read a lot of really good books in the past 2 months or so, and some of them have been like 5-star reads, and I try to be very particular about the books that I rate 5 stars. Definitely excited to see what I get up to for the rest of the year, and if you guys want to stay up to date on the books that I'm kind of reading in real time, I definitely recommend following me on Goodreads. I'll have my Goodreads linked in the description box below. I'm pretty good about updating that. I hope that you guys are having a great day wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.